Hello friends. Well, my name is Sunil Ranjan and I am an English teacher. Now here I have come up with a video on feminist approach to literature. Now here I begin. Feminist approach to literature is the literary analysis that arises from the viewpoint of feminism, feminist theory and feminist politics. Feminist approach resists traditional assumptions about female. In addition to assumptions which were considered to be universal, feminist approach to literature actively supports women's knowledge in literature and values their experiences. By examining the way female characters are defined, feminist approach challenges the male-centered outlook of authors. Feminist approach says that women in literature have been historically presented as objects seen from a male's perspective. Feminist approach examines the classic literature and questions whether society has predominantly valued male authors and their literary works because it has valued males more than females. Feminist approach recognizes that literature reflects and shapes stereotypes and other cultural assumptions. It examines how works of literature embody patriarchal attitudes or undermines them, sometimes both happening within the same work. In the late 19th century, in her work Woman's Bible, Elizabeth Cady Stanton looked beyond the more obvious male-centered outlook and interpretation. Later, feminist approach to literature intertwined with postmodernism and increasingly complex questions of gender and societal roles. It brought in tools from other critical disciplines such as historical analysis, psychology, linguistics, sociological analysis, and economic analysis. It also looked into how it involved race, sexuality, physical ability, and class. Feminist approach breaks down the ways in which women characters are described in novels, stories, plays, biographies, and histories, especially if the author is male. It examines how one's gender influences how one reads and interprets a text, and which characters and how the reader identifies depending on his or her gender. It analytically explores how women autobiographers and biographers of women treat their subjects and how biographers treat women who are secondary to the main subject. So, feminist approach describes relationships between the literary text and ideas about power and sexuality and gender. Feminist approach studies the patriarchal or woman marginalizing language, such as a universal use of the masculine pronouns he and him. It studies the differences in writing style of men and women. For instance, where women use more reflexive language and men use more direct language, as we find in the two expressions such as she let herself in, where the language is more impulsive and natural, and when the sentence goes, he opened the door, the language tends to be more direct. Feminist approach reclaims women writers who are little known or have been marginalized or undervalued or who have challenged the male-dominant mindset. The early English playwright Aphra Behn was treated differently than male writers from her own time forward, and the recovery of the African American novelist and short story writer Zola Neale Hurston by the American short story writer, novelist, poet, and social activist Alice Walker. Feminist approach to literature examines how relationships between men and women and those assuming male and female roles are depicted in the text. It examines the text to find ways in which patriarchal mindset is resisted or could have been resisted. Feminist approach is different from genocriticism, the term coined by American literary critic Elaine Showalter in her 1979 essay towards a feminist politics that aimed to establish a literary tradition of women without incorporating male authors. She felt that feminist criticism still worked within male assumptions, while genocriticism would begin a new phase of women's self-discovery. Genocriticism attempts to understand women's writing as a fundamental part of female reality. Feminist approach also examines the literary works of men, whereas genocriticism studies and examines the literary works of women only as writers and explores and records female creativity. So friends, here I come to the end of this topic, and that was feminist approach to English literature. So if you subscribe to my channel, I promise that I'll be coming up with knowledgeable videos for you. Thank you.